The strikes were a spectacular military success.
Some airlines have started cancelling flights to the Persian Gulf after the US attacks on Iran. Qantas doesn't fly to Doha but says it is monitoring the situation closely.
So amid the Iran-Israel conflict, Australia has changed its travel advice level for Australians travelling through Qatar, and that includes Aussies that are heading to Europe via Doha. So Virgin Australia actually just launched their new long-haul flights via Doha. Through Smart Traveller, the Australian Department of Foreign Affairs gives countries advice levels. There's 4 advice levels, from safe to travel to do not travel. Qatar is now being moved up to level 2, which is to exercise a high degree of caution.
They warned of flight cancellations, possible airspace closures and other travel disruptions, which all ended up happening after Iran fired missiles at Qatar.
With airspace closures, that can happen at any time. So you could possibly be in the air when an airspace is closed, and then your aircraft will need to divert if it was flying through that area or landing in that area. Australian aviation expert Keith Tonkin explained to us that a country is in charge of closing its own airspace if it wants to, and that can be the entire airspace or even just a section of it. Even if the airspace is not closed, Mr. Tonkin said there are hazards that may need to be avoided, such as other aircraft flying through the space to deliver weapons or missiles being fired in a particular area. Even if flights are not landing in an area with a closed airspace, they can be affected by needing to change their flight path, and this could result in flights needing to divert to get more fuel. Mr. Tonkin said one of the interesting things is that now we have several airspace volumes not able to fly through at the moment because of the war in Ukraine, what's happening in the Middle East, and even Pakistan and India. But a lot of aeroplanes are getting condensed into less airspace. There are fewer flight routes available for them to fly through, so there is a bit of congestion. More aeroplanes being processed by air traffic controllers that they would not have been doing in the past. The system is being pressured where those aeroplanes are now being diverted through different airspace. So the good news is travel insurance experts say that you will still be able to get cover because it's a level 2. It's not like it's a level 4, but it is likely to be more expensive because it's being deemed a greater risk to travel there.
So smart travel alerts are really important for travel insurance companies, and they keep a very close eye on them, as travelers should as well, to make sure that the risk rating that they've given every country across the world in their database is appropriate. And Smart Traveller, for the most part, is one of the more robust ways to sort of sense check and judge that risk assessment. The second risk category typically is not where you'll start to drop off cover, so you should still be able to get travel insurance for a trip that goes to or through Qatar. However, it's definitely worth reading the policy documents, the product disclosure statement, and all of your exclusions especially, to make sure that that particular travel insurance company doesn't make any changes, because it's possible that they might start to introduce some exclusions.
And if your flight ends up getting diverted because they've closed the airspace or the aircraft has to avoid some hazards for whatever reason, are you likely to be covered if you end up in a different destination than what you planned?
So if you're on a plane that is going through Qatar and you get diverted, which is a little bit more likely across the Middle East, what is going to happen is your travel insurance policy should be based on your planned itinerary. If it happens that you have to land in, say, India on the way through, that technically wasn't part of your travel insurance quote. However, it was not part of the planned trip. And so you should still be covered for what your trip itinerary based on that risk factor. At the end of the day, though, I think most people, if they are going through Qatar, are more likely to be diverted to a relatively stable country, a country that is on the 1 or 2 travel alert level on Smart Traveller. So around Qatar at the moment, you've still got the UAE, you've still got Saudi Arabia, you've got most of Southeast Asia, India, and on the other side, Turkey, where a flight could be diverted to, and they are still only at the 1 or 2 Smart Traveller level. So in all likelihood, you would probably be diverted to a country that is on the same level or lower than Qatar itself. It's definitely going to be a little bit more expensive to get a policy that goes through the Middle East as a result of what's happened over the last couple of weeks. Frankly, over the last couple of years, there has been enough activity in the Middle East that the premiums would have already been rising. And that's because the higher risk your itinerary produces in terms of your likelihood of needing to claim for an interruption or a delay or a diversion, the more likely the insurers are going to have to pay out in a claim. So it's going to be more expensive. If you have any flight booked, whether it's going to Europe in the European summer, North America in the North American summer, or frankly anywhere in the world, you should already have your travel insurance booked. And if you don't, get online and do it now, because the earlier you book your travel insurance, the more covered you'll be. You won't pay any extra for booking it now rather than, a week before the trip. In fact, you might save money because things might escalate. But if you get it now, changes over the next couple of weeks won't affect your policy. Whereas if things get worse in, say, 2 weeks' time, and then you get travel insurance, you may be fully excluded. You may not be able to get cover for that part of the trip because of the situation changing. So yes, get your travel insurance as quick as possible. And if you have to pay a little more, unfortunately, it's one of those things we have to wear. That's the value of insurance in many ways, because the risk is higher. If people are worried about the cost of travel insurance, especially if premiums are creeping up because of unrest in the Middle East, then the best thing you can do is to compare policies. You can do it on Finder, or you can get out there and, put the boots on the ground yourself and compare policies from multiple different providers. There are different providers who will offer the same coverage for a different price. So if it's something that you really are trying to save a little bit of money on, which, I get it, that's honestly the number one way to do it. If you can't change anything else, you can at least change that.